Hey John.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. How you doing?
Good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So John Zeratsky is joining me today, and it's a real pleasure to talk to you. Thanks again, John, for coming on. Uh,
Yeah, thank you for having me.
no worries. So just to give you a little bit of background on the new normal and people who might be watching this, the new normal is all about discussing the kind of current reality that we find ourselves in right now. And we're speaking to a wide range of people from all different backgrounds and kind of gathering their insights and advice. So it's been really interesting. I think we've done about 4 or 5 so far. So before we get into that and I start asking some big questions, perhaps, I've done you the honor of preparing an intro for you.
Come back in like 10 minutes. So give you proper time to really go through all
Exactly,
of
exactly. So I'm gonna do my best. If I've missed anything, please do let me know.
I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, yeah. So John, you've been a designer for over 15 years, and you've worked for many notable companies, including FeedBurner, Google, and YouTube during that time. And then you've helped several household name startups such as Slack, Nest, and Medium, as well, while working as a design partner at Google Ventures. And you've also gone on to author 2 best-selling books, the first of which, I'll flip these
Oh,
around.
look at that.
I know, props and everything. So the first of which
Yeah.
is Sprint, which is an amazing book that we love, which is all about solving big problems and testing new ideas in a short space of time using the design sprint framework. And the next more recent book as well is Make Time. Look at that. I
Oh my,
managed
you've
to
got
grab
both
them
of
from the
them.
office before I ran home. So this is all about how to plan your days and make the most of your time, and it's packed with practical advice and tips all about how to maximize the time that you have. So alongside that, you're also a keynote speaker and facilitator as well, and you've worked with the
Yeah.
likes of Airbnb, IDEO, and Netflix, to name a few. And you currently
Yeah.
live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you own a boat called Pineapple, which you've sailed around Central America for 18 months.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we no longer own the boat. We decided to sell
Oh,
it. But yeah, we moved aboard. So the Pineapple was our home
yeah, yeah,
from 2017 to 2019. And we sailed from San Francisco to Key West,
yeah.
Florida, via the Panama Canal. And these days we're living a much more land-based lifestyle. My wife is in graduate school, and I'm building my business, doing workshops and speaking and writing. And so it didn't make sense to have the boat. So
No.
we said goodbye.
Okay, so I'll change that to you did own a boat called Pineapple. But
Yeah,
apart
yeah,
from that,
exactly.
was that a pretty good reflection of your?
That was excellent. Yeah,
Excellent.
thank you.
Cool, no worries. So
Yeah.
I guess the most pressing question then, John, that I've got to ask you first, that's on everyone's lips, is why was your boat called Pineapple?
I wish I had like a really crisp answer, like, oh, that's because, that was the family crest, or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, the the answer is that we had never had the chance to name a boat before. So we had previously owned boats, but they came with a name. So
Okay.
this boat, we got to pick our own name. So of course, I'm a writer, and my wife actually is a writer as well, and she also studied journalism like I did, and so we wanted to pick a good name. We wanted something that was unique.
Yeah.
We wanted something that was easy to say and understand over the radio, because when you're on boats traveling, you often use a radio to sort of communicate. We wanted something that people could say in different languages,
Yeah.
so it wasn't very difficult to pronounce. And we also didn't want to be too serious about it. We didn't want to call it the, freedom or the
Yeah.
golden eagle, or, we wanted it to be a little bit lighthearted. So we chose Pineapple, which is a symbol of hospitality, of exploration, of discovery. And so
There's quite a few factors that went into that. It had to be easy to say over the radio, friendly, not too serious. Yeah.
yes, there were many variables, and we saw a boat in San Francisco.
Yeah.
At one point, we saw a boat named Coconut.
Okay.
And we thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting name. And that kind of got us thinking about what are other fruits, we talked about mangoes, and yeah, pineapple is the winner.
It's cool. I like it. It's fruity. It's yeah, very
Thanks.
good. So let's talk a little bit. Obviously, we've given you an intro. We just talked a little bit about the many different hats that you wear, if you like. So I'm just interested in what your day to day looks like. Possibly your kind of week as well. How does that generally look?
For me, the most important thing is giving myself enough uninterrupted time to focus on the sort of deep creative work
Yeah,
that is at the core of what I do. Because if I stop creating, if I stop writing and producing new things, I feel like my value goes away. My value to the world.
yeah.
I never want to be one of those tired, public speakers who's given the same old talk every single time and
Sure.
that has been saying the same things for 10 years, 15
Yeah,
years. And so it's important to me, and I enjoy it. It's important to me to continue to create new things. And so I structure my day around that. And that's a lot easier to do now than it used to be.
yeah,
Well, now, meaning during the COVID-19 crisis,
yeah.
but also now that I work for myself instead of working at a big company. But we can talk about how I sort of managed it in those days. But so the way I do that is morning is my time.
Yeah. So you're a real early riser, aren't you? You get up at 5 in the morning. Is that right?
I don't get up quite so early anymore.
No.
I used to get up quite early because what I would do is I would spend a couple hours working before I went into the office. So I
Yeah,
used to, when we lived in San Francisco and I was working at Google Ventures, I would wake up around 5:30, 5:45, and I would have a solid couple of hours to get stuff done,
yeah,
get myself ready for the day, and still be into the office by 9:30, 10.
yeah.
These days I wake up around 6:30.
Okay.
Depends on when the cats wake me up.
Yeah,
Because
it's still pretty early.
the cat in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
I tried it this week because I'm working from home at the moment. I've got two young
Yeah.
kids, and kids get up really early anyway. But I did it
Yeah.
this week. I set one day where I went to bed early and I got up and I was just like, oh, peace and freedom. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Setting yourself up for the day and just having a bit of peace and quiet is yeah, definitely an amazing thing,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And I felt that, it didn't come naturally to me. I'm not naturally a morning person. I sort of decided to become one and went through a series of experiments and trials to figure it out. And I kind of had the same experience where when I first tried it, I was like, wow, this is not like the other time. This hour, these 2 hours, first thing in the morning, they are not the same as 2 hours in the afternoon
No,
or in the evening.
no.
They're special. They're free. They're quiet, and so it does take a bit of practice to learn to use those hours for something.
Yeah.
And eventually I got into that. But so basically today, what my life looks like is I wake up and first thing I do is I start working on whatever project it is I'm excited about, and I usually spend the bulk of the morning focused on that. I take breaks, I eat, I shower, I do all those things. But yeah, most of the morning kind of on focused work.
Yeah.
Afternoon is my time for administrative work, for meetings, for emails, for anything else like that that's got to happen. I usually try to give myself sort of a knockoff time. So a time of the day when it's like, all right, I'm done working. And I sort of mark that transition by doing some kind of exercise, physical movement, whether that's going for a walk or going to a yoga class, or even just doing a kind of a simple strength workout here at home. But that's kind of my marker. It's sort of like, all right, when I'm done with work, I step away from the computer, I log out, and I transition into that evening routine, which is really about exercise. It's about cooking and eating and hanging out with my wife and with friends and, getting drinks. So these days, virtual video,
Yeah.
conferencing, drinks. But a big concept for me is compartmentalization. And that's a long and complicated word, but
It is.
it's a long word for a simple concept, which is do one thing at a time and focus on doing it well, and align those chunks to the parts of your day where they fit best for you. And the things that fit best for me are not going to work for everybody. My wife and I don't have kids, but we have tons of friends who do have kids, and their days look very, very different. And even Jake Knapp, my good friend, my co-author on both books, his days look very different from mine because he has two sons, and so his time to work on his highlight, his sort of,
Yeah,
is in the evening,
yeah,
because that's when the house is quiet, and, he can kind of get himself into a zone where he can really bring his best energy to work
yeah,
at
yeah,
that time.
yeah.
So, but anyway, the kind of underlying concept is to focus on one thing at a time. But for me personally, to answer your question, that's how my days look.
Okay, that's interesting. So do you do a lot of travel as well, day to day, week to week, or is that more of a kind of intermittent thing?
Before everything got shut down, I was traveling quite a bit. Yeah, for speaking, for teaching, and that is quite that can be quite draining. Travel is Jake and I call it a time crater, because if you think about an asteroid hitting a planet and creating a crater, the asteroid is pretty small,
Yeah,
right? But when it makes that impact, the crater that it creates is huge relative to the size of the asteroid. And that's how travel is too. It might be a 1-day trip to give a 1-hour speech
yeah.
at a conference.
It's all the stuff either side, isn't it?
Yeah, the crater can really kind of take over a whole week, and it can mean that it's difficult to really focus and get stuff done, or sort of be able to be present and be energetic for that whole week. And so travel is difficult in that sense, although I do enjoy it, and I think it's important for what I do. And so one of the things that I have experimented with, again, before we all stopped traveling, one of the things that I experimented with was having certain months of the year where I don't travel. So what I did in 2019 was we actually finished up our sailing voyage in May. And then I basically took August and December off from events. So I was still working.
Yeah,
It's not like I was on vacation, but I was not doing any events. I was not doing any travel. So those were months where I was able to work on bigger projects. In December, it's time to kind of celebrate holidays with family and that sort of thing. But that actually, we'll see if, hopefully I'll get a chance to apply that system again later this year. But that worked really, really well for me. This idea of again, it's the compartmentalization thing. It's the one thing at a time thing, but just zoomed way out. Instead of being hours of the day, it's like what are the seasons of my year? There's the fall season where I'm on the road all the time speaking, but then there's the kind of slow, the holiday season, the winter season, where I'm going to stay at home. I'm going to focus on being with friends and family, on kind of catching up on some work and some reading and some things like that.
I think everything moves in kind of ebbs and flows, doesn't it? And you've got to find your rhythm, which is something that you seem to be very good at, and you seem to be very in tune with as well, which I think is really interesting. So how do you feel, or how did you feel recently when everything started changing? And obviously, part of what you do, which is why I asked you about the travel thing, is going and doing events and that sort of thing. And what's changed for you in particular recently?
Well, it depends how you look at it. Either everything has changed or nothing has changed for me. And what I mean by that is that everything has changed in the sense that, yeah, I'm not getting on a plane and flying somewhere to give a talk anymore. But if you look at sort of the core, the essence of the work that I do, and the reason that is valuable for people, and I hope it is valuable, I hope it's helpful, that really hasn't changed, because I can still give talks. For example, just yesterday I did a live video keynote, and it was a little bit shorter than a normal keynote, but it was a keynote. There was slides, and it was rehearsed kind of presentation. And so I was delivering that. Right now we're working on creating a kind of guide for running remote design sprints. And and we're by far the foremost experts on remote design sprints. And there's a lot of people in the world who have been running remote sprints, and same thing, there's, you can still deliver on that value. You can still create that experience that helps people come together and focus on solutions to their big problems, their opportunities, even though you're doing it remotely. And so I actually, I go through different phases. Sometimes I think, sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, the world is crazy.
It hits you in waves.
Yeah. But then at the other times I'm like, I'm just, there's a few adjustments that are necessary. And obviously I'm ridiculously fortunate to be in that position. For some people, their world really has changed in very, very devastating ways.
Yeah.
And so, I definitely want to acknowledge that,
Yeah, of course.
but that's kind of the other side of it for me, is like, I've got to adapt, but I can still keep doing the work that I care about, and I can continue to help people in the ways that I really think are important.
Yeah, excellent. So in many ways things have changed quite a bit, and in some ways they haven't. I don't know about you, but I find, I kind of think about doing something and then I'm like, oh yeah, I can't do that. So it's kind of, that's when it hits you in waves, isn't it? Where you're just like, yeah, you're trying to plan around stuff that you would usually do, or just thinking, it's a mind reframing kind of exercise.
It is,
moment, isn't it?
and I think it's for me, one of the patterns that I've noticed is that from a business perspective, and perhaps from like a personal perspective, although I haven't really thought about it in this way, from a business perspective, I think it forces you to examine the value of what you're doing. Like, why is this valuable? If I'm running an opportunity sprint, for example, with a team, like, why is that valuable? Is it valuable because we're all in the same room together?
Yeah.
Is it valuable because I gave them an excuse and a constraint to shut everything else off for a day and focus on that?
Yeah.
Is it valuable because of the work that people are bringing? And so I just think it's a helpful, instead of like snapping into these like, oh, it's one of those, it's that template of that kind of meeting or that kind of event.
Yeah.
We have to break through that shell of that template a little bit and say, okay, what is it really? Like, what's really at the core? And what's the new shell that we put it in that makes it work in this environment where we can't travel and we can't gather?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people are just happy I remember the first week I was off and kind of working from home, I was just lined up so many video calls. I was just so happy to talk to people, just so used to being around people all day, every day. And I'm a real kind of people person. So I think, people are just really grateful for any kind of interaction, whether it's on screen or not.
Yeah, definitely.
So in Make Time, you talk a lot about making sure each day is based around a highlight, which is a really interesting kind of angle on it. So I'm just wondering what your advice is at the moment for people to make sure that their days still have highlights. And the reason why I ask that, I guess, is because Make Time it was written in a pre-pandemic kind of world, wasn't it? Where our lives were structured and they were, much more predictable than they are at the moment, and the variables were kind of, set for most people. So, I guess this question reflects to the here and now. How can we make sure when our days are largely the same for some people, that we make sure that we factor in those highlights?
Yeah. A lot of those normal structures, routines that you mentioned, they've been wiped away. And so, it's there's a metaphor I like to use that I got from the writer Annie Dillard, which is that schedule is like scaffolding for your day. So if you picture, some folks painting the side of a house, they're going to set up the scaffolding, and then they're going to have that nice platform to stand on, and they can work back and forth. They got both of their hands. They can work, they can paint, whatever. They know that they're secure. They know that they're safe because they've got that structure. Now it's like somebody came through and knocked away the scaffolding, right? Yeah. And so now, to extend the metaphor, it's like, every time we want to do something, we've got to put up a ladder. We have to like go get the ladder out of the shed and carry it and stand it up against the house. And then we have to climb the ladder, and we have to paint, like sort of hanging on with one hand and painting with the other hand. And so it just slows us down. It makes it more difficult. It makes us feel less stable and less certain and less confident about what we're doing and what we're able to do. And so I think it's really important that people start to put up some of their own scaffolding and create some of their own structures, especially since, like you said, it's possible for the whole day to just sort of kind of feel the same. It's just kind of this mush of like, I'm just sitting in front of the computer, and sometimes I'm on a call, and sometimes I'm doing emails.
That's such a good word for it, mush. It's just kind of...
But we don't have the same kind of dividing lines or differentiating structures between things. And so I encourage people to create those things, to set those things out. And I think there's two really important ways to do that. One is to choose a highlight for every day.
Yeah.
This is valuable for a bunch of reasons, but I think the biggest benefit of it is that it kind of gives you a sense of clarity and purpose for each day. It gives your day a focal point so that it doesn't feel like that mush. Instead, it feels like there's that one building block, there's that one thing that really matters, and then there's everything else. And then the second thing that I think is valuable is to kind of build a structure around that. So to actually create your own schedule for yourself and make that as detailed or as general as you want. And as you mentioned, I like to plan my day down to an extreme level of detail because that's what works for me. But some people, I was doing a webinar last week and somebody shared their personal schedule, which was literally on a sticky note. It just had like these big boxes. It was like a box, like it was a person who was in a sort of a, she wears a bunch of different hats at work. And so like she had a box that just said like marketing. And then like, it's like Monday morning marketing, Monday afternoon HR. And she just like blocked out her whole week, literally just drawn on a sticky note. And so,
I like it. Simple is good sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so anyway, I think because we have all lived for so long with certain kinds of structures and constraints and supports, whether they work well for us or not, we kind of need those things. And so, and then the silver lining is like, let's say our old structures weren't working well, which I think we could all argue that to some extent, the old ways of doing things didn't work great for us. There was always something we could improve. So now the silver lining is, as you set up these new structures, you can hopefully make them a little bit better for you in some way. They can hopefully be oriented more around the stuff that you really want to be spending your time on.
Yeah.
And less around all the other stuff that gets in the way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're right. And I think, one of the interesting things, I've kind of revisited the book this week, after reading it a little while ago. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about the highlight thing is that you talk about tasks being too granular and then just too many tasks, and then the kind of long-term goals and the kind of long-term stuff being too far away to motivate you. So the kind of highlight is the sweet spot in the middle, which is really interesting. And I think at the moment it's the long-term stuff is kind of off the table because we don't really know what's happening. So it's a really interesting time in that way. And seemingly like, there are just many tasks you could be doing, but I think the highlight is a great way to do it. So I'm definitely rebooting the highlight machine over here.
You also asked about like how to do it or like how to keep doing it. And I'm a big fan of outsourcing discipline. So,
yes,
instead of sort of, clenching your fists and saying, all right, I'm going to do it. Today I'm going to focus. I'm not going to get distracted. I'm going to exercise and sleep well and do all those things. That is the research on willpower shows that might work in the short term. That might work to make kind of one-off little changes, but that's not going to be sustainable in the long term.
No.
And you need to really reconfigure the external structures. So the tools you use, the processes that you use, the physical environment of your home, the structure, the schedule that you have, you need to like outsource those things to set yourself up for success. So for the highlight, even something as simple as, setting a calendar reminder every day at 7 a.m. that says what's going to be your highlight today. And then, having a block on the calendar that shows up every day that's repeating, from 9 to 11 a.m. or whatever time works for you, like this is highlight time. Even something as simple as that can really help. Of course, the flip side of it, that's kind of offense, that's sort of what you want to be doing. But then there's also the defense, there's the other side of it where you need to, make sure that you're not getting sucked into all the other distractions and things. And so that's where tactics like removing apps from your phone or blocking access to websites really come in.
That's it. So that's my next question, John. You're jumping ahead of me there, but about technology. So it's really interesting because another factor of the book is all about technology, and this is across both books actually, which is interesting. So in the sprint, you say, nobody bring their devices into the sprint. It's all about being focused, and if you need to make a call, if you need to check an email, out of the room you go, sort of thing. And I love that, and that's something that we try and enforce it, in the workshops that we do, because it is a really serious thing. And as soon as someone looks at that screen, that's it, you've lost them. And so, yeah, and in Make Time as well, you know, blocking those barriers to technology is really important. And what you call like infinity pools, which is apps and websites which just serve you constant, you know, distractions, don't they?
That infinite supply of content where, you know, you can pull to refresh, or it's streaming. It's like Netflix, where as soon as you finish watching one episode, like the next one starts playing.
Yeah.
It's that, all that stuff. Those are the infinity pools.
So easy and convenient, isn't it? So
yeah.
So I guess, and we kind of touched on this earlier when you were talking about your webinars and stuff like that. But you know, interactions at the moment outside of our homes with the people who live with us are all on the screen, aren't they? And they're all, you know, they're all virtual. So how important is it at the moment, do you think, to kind of give technology a break, to stash them away and try and do something else for a bit? Is now more important than ever to try and make that a rule and factor that in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's not necessarily a matter of whether you should give technology a break or not, because there are obviously great and amazing things that we can do with technology. I mean, we need technology, but I think the important concept is friction. And so, like you mentioned, things like Netflix are sort of engineered to be as seamless and convenient and easy as possible. Very low friction. You know, it's really simple to kind of get sucked into that next episode or that next pull to refresh of Twitter or Instagram. But then when you think about your day and you think about the fact that you're sitting at a computer, you know, doing Zoom calls, doing emails, doing whatever, and it's all in front of a computer. And it's not just the computer, but you probably got your phone next to you on one side, your iPad next to you on the other side. Now you've also kind of reduced the friction around getting pulled into those things in the first place. So, you know, you're always one tab away from whatever website you want to load, whatever Google search you want to do. You're just, you know, it's super easy to, you know, grab the phone if you get a little bit bored during a meeting or you've got 15 minutes between meetings. And so for me, the important thing about technology, and we try to, you know, talk about this in the book as well, and Make Time, is to focus on the parts of technology that really support us, you know, the superpowers that we can get from using technology, things like video conferencing, which really do make us feel like we're living in the future and allow us to have this face-to-face contact that we need, and sort of embrace those and reduce the friction around those, but then build barriers around the other stuff, the stuff that doesn't make us feel good, the stuff that makes us feel like we're being used by it instead of us using it. And so that's where uninstalling apps, logging out of websites, using blockers like Freedom to limit your access to certain sites, even changes to your physical environment. Like my wife and I here at home, like we don't have a television in our living room, which is where I'm sitting now. Like it's in a different room. So for us, like choosing to watch TV is like a decision. You know, we talk about, oh, what do you want to watch after dinner? And we have to like go into that other room and watch it. So any way that you can add some of that friction back in,
absolutely,
is going to help you be more intentional about what you're paying attention to.
That's it. It's interesting actually, because this week I've taken that advice. I've taken, you know, my social media off my phone and my email accounts as well. I switch them off, and it's amazing how often you just you find yourself and you're just there, and you haven't even, it's not even a conscious decision. You're just suddenly looking for something, and I'm like, oh, there's nothing there anymore. What am I doing?
Well, and when you experience that, it's a reminder of how powerful habits are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, habits really, they connect this sort of cue or something that prompts you to chat, to perform that action. They connect that up to that reward of kind of getting that reward of, oh, I saw something really interesting, or, oh, that gave me a little bit of
I just need a little bit of a
dopamine
fix.
hit.
Yeah.
And so then when you eliminate the reward part of it, it's funny because then you're like, oh my God, I still have this pull. I still have
it's almost
this
like muscle memory, isn't it? Yeah, it's habit forming. That's interesting. No, and I think the other thing that you talk about in the book is about kind of busyness and default states as well. So default states is in, you know, the kind of the busy pool that we fall into, where we constantly feel like we have to make use of every moment of our day. And, we always have to feel like our calendar is full of scheduled items and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if now is the best time possibly, that's kind of been forced upon us to, like you said just now, kind of reset some of those defaults and kind of make this change while we're in this time of kind of unrest and this, I guess it's kind of like the convenience has been whipped away from us, hasn't it? And it's a time when we could possibly reform some of those habits. What do you think around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And then the name of this program is the new normal, and that's exactly what we're all dealing with right now. And it's to use another construction metaphor,
Yeah,
it's kind of like the concrete has just been poured into the forms for the foundation, and it's still wet, and we still right now we have the chance to kind of adjust the forms, and we can kind of shape and mold this new normal,
yeah,
this new set of defaults. We can still adjust it, but soon, very soon, it's going to solidify.
yeah.
And then it's going to be incredibly difficult to change. It's not going to be impossible. It's totally doable, but it's going to be more difficult. And we certainly don't want to wait for the next global crisis
No,
to change
we
everything.
shouldn't need such a drastic catalyst, I don't think, to make these changes. But it's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, like you said before, with the kind of devices and stuff, we're habit forming creatures, and suddenly our habits have kind of been taken away. So this could be the perfect time to remold ourselves and maybe make a better 2.0.
Yeah.
One of the other things, that's very interesting, that you talk about is energy. So a lot of people that I've spoken to, they just, especially at the moment, they just wake up and they have those days. And I know, because I've had some of them myself, where I wake up and I'm just like, I just don't have the energy today to kind of work with this new normal, or I don't have the energy to kind of pump myself up and get myself going with this. It's just
Yeah.
it's kind of too much effort. And I think in the book you talk about, the connections between our kind of bodies and our minds, and you talk about, the even comparing our modern day lifestyle kind of pre-pandemic to our prehistoric ancestors, and the way that those two lifestyles kind of synergize, and stark differences between them. So I'm just wondering, at the moment, in our current situation, when we're kind of more static than we possibly want to be, how we keep ourselves energized in this situation.
When we were writing Make Time, we did a lot of research on what are the things that give us energy. And I think a lot of advice about taking care of ourselves, it's connected to this very long-term benefit of health. Like, this is what you should do. You should eat well, because then you'll be healthy and you'll live this long life and you won't get these diseases. But it's very difficult to like convince ourselves to do something
It's
now
too long
for a
term, isn't
long.
it? Yeah.
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 And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to find, like, what are the things that you can do now that also help you now, right? The short-term things that you can do that give you energy, for that immediate reward of feeling like you can make the most of your time. You can really focus. You can really be there
Yeah.
for that stuff that matters to you. And so we found there was kind of a bunch of categories. Food is obviously one of them. Exercise is another. Sleep is a huge one. But there were a couple that we think that were a little bit surprising to us, like the sort of value of quiet, of having time to just be alone and be disconnected from everything else. So it's not just literally quiet as in no sound,
Yeah.
but it's also figuratively, not having constant inputs. And then another one that's, I think, really relevant right now is the energy that we get from spending time with other people. And that is a very primal, it's a physiological thing.
Yeah.
Like, there are different things that happen in your brain when you talk to somebody face to face than when you chat with them, text them, or even talk on the telephone. And we need those things, and those things give us energy. So we have to adjust. We have to find new and different ways of recreating all those activities, of bringing those different sort of building blocks of energy into this new normal. And for me, what I look to are a lot of the same kind of principles that we talked about already. I look at friction. So when it comes to food, for example, like, the foods that you have on hand, that you have easy access to, are the foods you're going to eat, right? So if you want to be eating healthier foods so that you have better energy, keep healthier foods stocked in the kitchen, especially now that we're eating all of our meals
It's
at home,
amazing.
right?
Yeah. Every lunch that I've had, it's been incredible. Yeah. So many fresh fruit and
Yeah.
vegetables. And, I think about what I'd eat normally. And lunch is an inconvenience to me. I just grab whatever's around and,
Yep.
carry on working.
Making it easier to do those things that we want to do, using things like scheduling. So that idea I talked about of kind of scheduling, for me, what works for me is like a sort of exercise at the end of the day to sort of mark it's time to log off and be done and have some exercise. But yeah, using scheduling, using the concept of friction,
Yeah.
using accountability with other people, making plans with other people, creating habits around all those things. But it's really, really important that we try to figure out how to translate all those things that were important to us before and that we maybe got in other ways. It's really important to figure out how to translate those into things that are going to work for us right now.
Yeah. So I guess if you book yourself to do a talk or a workshop or whatever it is, it gives you that opportunity not only to have that face-to-face, because we're social creatures and we need that time where we're talking to people, whether it's on a screen or not, but also just holds you accountable and gets you up in the morning, and that you need to sleep beforehand. So I guess the idea is just keep booking stuff in and trying to carry on.
Well, even if you're just booking it with yourself,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Even if you're scheduling like a daily walk, or you're scheduling a nap, it could be anything. Maybe you're scheduling, sitting down for lunch with your kids, your family, and that's something where it's devices off, screens off, and that's something that gives you energy. It doesn't all have to be, external commitments. We respond very well to internal commitments too.
Yeah, that's true. I think some days like that kind of external accountability is really, some days you can really self-motivate, can't you? And some days you do really need that, oh, okay, I've made that commitment, and I don't want to let those people down, sort of. So maybe a mixture of the two, depending on how you feel. And just, I think the other thing is just, I guess just give yourself a break, at the moment, and just realize that you're not going to be, it's a tremendous time of change, and it's not going to be easy to digest every day. So
yeah,
just roll with
I'm
it.
glad you mentioned that, because I think that's one of the things that doesn't get said enough.
Yeah.
Especially in conversations like this about making the most of our time and trying to pivot our businesses and our personal lives. It's that we are living through a really, really traumatic and really stressful thing right now, and so we need to change our own expectations. Our feelings of like disappointment or guilt, those come from our own expectations of ourselves. And so one of the ways we can make ourselves feel better is by adjusting our expectations in response to what's happening in the world. And so I think it's really important that we do that right now.
No, that's brilliant. Thanks, John. Just finally, I just like to kind of end on lasting change, and I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit throughout. But I'm interested in what advice you'd give people right now looking to get into kind of managing their time and making a lasting change, before we do return to normal. So we talked a little bit about kind of molding ourselves, and what would be a great kind of starting point for someone that's like, yes, this is speaking to me, I've been doing it wrong, this whole time, how do I get on this bandwagon? And I'm guessing like maybe buying this book would be a good start. So I've done the plug for you there. But yeah, if there's any
I appreciate that.
If there's anything else that you can think of that would help people make a lasting change, once we get over this, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, the changes that we make now are going to become our new normal. They're going to become our new habits, and habits are very durable. So the habits that we set up now are going to persist, and they're going to sustain after this crisis passes, whatever that looks like, however long that takes. The sort of the smallest possible collection of advice that I would give, the sort of, I sometimes, so in the book we have 87 tactics, really bite-sized concrete things. And Jake and I have come up with a bunch more bonus tactics that we share.
Yeah.
The Make Time community and things like that. And so we sometimes talk about your tactic stack.
Yeah.
So what is the stack of tactics that you use every day that's kind of your go-to? And I think right now, the tactic stack that I would recommend is to establish a daily habit of choosing a highlight. So choosing that one thing that you most want to make time for, and then reflecting at the end of the day on how it went. So paying attention to what's working for you. How did I feel today? Was I focused? Was I energized? And if not, why? And what can I do about it? And just getting in that habit, that loop of setting a highlight and reflecting, setting a highlight and reflecting.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then the thing that I would layer on is using the tactics from the laser section of the book. So the second step, which is all about creating barriers around distraction.
Yes.
So that you are more able, you're free to focus on that highlight, on that thing that you care about. So you're not having to beat yourself up. You're not trying to use willpower and discipline to stay focused. You're actually making it easier for yourself to stay focused because, you grab the phone, but there's nothing to check. Like you said, the app is not there. And so starting with the things that are most tempting for you, or have the sort of the biggest hit to your mental health or your anxiety. And so, that might be the breaking news alerts. It might be, maybe on Twitter, all the tweets you see are doom and gloom, and that makes it very difficult for you to focus. I would say the thing that I would add is just try to find a way to create barriers around those things by uninstalling them, by blocking them, by logging out. And I think that tactic stack, that combination of that daily habit of the highlight and reflect, plus that sort of defensive backstop.
Don't trust your willpower. No willpower involved. Yeah.
I think that's like a strong kind of core collection of tactics that you can start doing now that are going to serve you really, really well throughout the coming weeks and months, and then into the future when things go back to normal, whatever that looks
normal,
like.
Inverted.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. That's been great. Thank you so much, John Zeratsky, for your time. Get yourselves a copy of Sprint and Make Time, and also check out johnzeratsky.com. Is that right? Is that the best place to get you?
Yeah, that's my personal website. But I think if people want to get started with the stuff that we've been talking about, the best place to go is maketime.blog.
Yeah, awesome. Maketime.blog. Get yourself there. Get the tools and the techniques that you need to manage your new normal yourself. And how you spend your time. Brilliant. Thank you so much, John. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.